Hail them.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
Hailing frequencies. Open.
I don't know why I keep giving alien street food a chance. It's always such a gamble.
Captain, we're being hailed.
On screen.
Hello, and welcome to another Hailing Frequencies Open podcast where we are trekking through the past and future of Star Trek. As always, I'm your host, and today, joining me here in the virtual studio, his screen name may be something of a red directive in itself. It's Damien.
Oh, I actually don't even know what that refers to, but I'm going to say, hello, Mike Jones. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, well, hopefully we'll get to that in today's episode. And I'm not going to delay any longer. She's desperate to talk about today's topic. Let's just get to it. It's Lanita.
That's right. I'm famously loving talking about the end of series. Makes me happy. So excited. Let's do it.
Does that mean you love it when series end? Because I feel like some of these I would have liked to continue. I would have liked another season of Discovery.
Absolutely. It's not that I love when series end, but everything has to end at some point. And if it's going to happen, then I want it to be worth it and not feel like they rushed it.
Right.
You phoned it in.
Right.
Or you've only done this because of monetary reasons.
Well,
so.
And how many times have epic shows ended on a whimper for one reason or another? Like Lost had a terrible ending.
Never finished it.
Oh, well.
Same.
And because when they started, they were like, yeah, there are polar bears. I was like, okay, I'm out. And I didn't even get to the polar bears. Like I had stopped watching it before then, but somebody mentioned like, I was like, but aren't they on an island? And I couldn't suspend my disbelief enough in that show, which sounds hilarious because I watch Game of Thrones and all of those, but for some reason that one just didn't catch me.
I didn't watch Game of Thrones, but I've heard debates that it did not end well.
I think I'm on the other side of like, there are parts of it I wish were different, but I am, me personally, happy with some of the choices that they made. Okay. A lot of the choices that they made, I was like, yup, I approve. Didn't die harsh enough. I approve.
Well, at some point it departed from the books, right? Or
I never read them books. Listen.
Oh, okay. I read the books. I read the books, and it certainly departed. And you know what? I don't think he has any idea how he's going to end those books. Those books, he's great at opening doors, but he has no idea
how to close them. And so here's the thing: is that yes, we all think that you books are supposed to be translated directly into movies. No, there's got to be some creative license and extra business that happens. So I'm like, it's fine. I never read them, but yet and still I can see there could have been some different choices made.
Yeah. Sorry if you're hearing text messages. I just got a text from Ben saying that he's not going to make it. So
this was going to be our shot.
Call.
I know. Yeah, dinner's running long. He has to put the kids to bed. Dinner. It's all well. It's
6:30 there.
Yeah, it's earlier there.
I'm like 7:30 at night. Kids should be sleep. No, they shouldn't because mine isn't. But
kids should be seen and not heard.
No, I want them to be heard. I want them to be loud and rambunctious and cause as much absolute chaos as possible.
Well, speaking of absolute chaos, let's look at this final season of Discovery and really kind of take a glance back at all of Discovery because I think that it opens the door for modern Trek in a way. I mean, I guess the JJ movies kind of did that, but in terms of TV, like Discovery was the first, of the new Trek television shows. And I was super excited about it, obviously, when it came out. And it ended up not being what I wanted it to be. But I was on board with it. And I've watched every episode. I'm not one of the haters. Because, Star Trek can be different. It doesn't all have to be the way you want it to be. It doesn't all have to be nostalgic and like TNG or, But, so yeah. How did you think it went in the beginning? Like, tell me your Discovery intro story, Damien.
I was excited about it. I yeah, I think I was in a place. I mean, it's hard to really to sort of like unknow all of the things that I know now to sort of go back and
Mm-hmm.
remember that. But
Right.
I um I think that I was just sort of hungry for more. So it had
Yeah.
been such a drought for a Star Trek fan that um that when it came back, I was excited for it and I was willing to sort of give it the benefit of the doubt. And I was kind of on board for the aim of it, that we
Mm.
are, the idea that we're in this golden age of television, that that The Sopranos came out what in the 90s, right? And that sort of opened the door for like TV could be like a movie and it could be a
Sure.
more elevated medium and that we could have these long form storytelling, and why not? Why should because Star Trek had been previously episodic, why does it have to be that? I mean,
Right.
yes, it why not try on serialized storytelling, just to see because obviously we know that I was a big Deep Space Nine fan and that I was very invested in the serialization there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in retrospect, that first season to me is probably the weakest. Um, but uh, but it was, and I think part of that is the fact that there was all of the sort of like creative shifts behind the scenes. That they were like, wait,
Absolutely.
is this the story about the Klingon War? Is this a story about the Mirror Universe? Like, what is
Right.
it?
Right. And they shifted show, like Brian Fuller was going to be the showrunner to begin with, and I think it
Right.
would have been a very different show. And um, it changed hands a few times.
And
Um,
there was talk of making it like an anthology series, which I still support that somebody
yeah.
comes out with that, like a season long form, like Star Trek miniseries
Mm.
that is standalone.
Yes.
And then
I like
season
that.
two, like almost like an American Horror Story or,
Ah,
something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
interessante.
and maybe less like the same cast, like all playing new
Different
parts,
people. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
but
Right.
like,
Right. Right.
because, and I still feel like there's a place for that in Star Trek universe. The idea that we
Oh
can
yeah.
explore these sort of longer stories in other sort of more remote corners of the Star Trek world. I think that's great. And I think the short treks kind of leaned into a little bit of that,
It did.
in an opposite kind of way. Obviously, it was short form, but it was like that there's like an infinite sort of number of these little standalone stories that can be out. But obviously, that's not what it was. But yeah, and it's it felt like a mistake to kill Giorgio right away,
Oh yeah,
which
it did.
but that's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi story. Like you have to kill the mentor. You have to kill the mentor
Mm.
so that the hero can grow. Like this is
Yeah.
and that it was this long-term story of like a character's journey from the absolute bottom to
Yeah.
the captain's chair, and that I think we know that it was always, regardless of what they intended to do with the show, I think it was always intended to be that.
Yeah, it is the Michael Burnham show. And I think that some of the fans were confused by that in the beginning because 90s Trek was always an ensemble.
Right.
Um, and she got some pushback. I mean, obviously there's misogyny, sexism, racism, but there were people who were like, who does she think she is? Like every, who's the Red Angel? Well, of course it's Michael Burnham. You know what I mean? Who's going to solve the problem? Well, yeah, it's of course it has to be Michael Burnham. You know what I mean? And that even happened in this final season, where she goes to she's in
Spoiler
the
alert.
spoiler alert. Yeah, if you haven't finished.
Oh my God, if you're listening to the wrap up, you've watched the
Right.
season, right? I mean,
Right.
who are you if you've not watched it?
People who love us and just want to hear what we have to say, and then we'll go back and
That's
watch
true.
and be like, "Oh, that happened. Okay, cool." Who don't care
Well,
about someone
love and
spoiling the end of a
apologies
book.
to those
Right.
people.
But she's at the library and she's like, oh my gosh, it's me. Like she literally said it's me. Like the puzzle is about her own. And I'm like, well, of course it is. Have you been watching this show?
No, she hasn't. She's been living it. But here's the thing: is that that moment of realization is so it's surprising. Like it shocks her. Like it's not. It would have been different if she was like, "Yeah, it's me." I mean, of course, this was literally like, I thought that we were all in this together.
Yeah.
Right. Like the whole time, it's like we are all figuring out these pieces. Oh, you've used math in a way, you've used research in this way, and we each get a piece based on what we've all ensemble done together. And the fact that it ended up being, it's just me. Like I have to do it.
Right.
I feel like it in that moment, it was probably like shock, awe, a little bit of fear, human nature, like to have a little bit of fear, like, am I strong enough to do whatever it is that I have to do? And then pulling up your big girl panties and being like, I'm gonna get this shit done.
Right. Right. Which, is what she has to do. That's what she does every season, So in the first season, we learn the thing that I didn't like about the first season, let me just put it this way. I really didn't like Lorca. And then, of course, when they're like, he's from the mirror universe.
You're like, that
I was
makes
like, well,
sense. That's
no
why I hate
wonder
you.
why I don't like him. No, because I was just like, this is Starfleet. Like, how did this guy get to the position that he's in? He's such a, mustache twirling villain. Yeah, like he's just awful. So that then it made sense, but they had already lost me at that point. You know what I mean? So really, I wasn't on board. And well, the things in the second season that I liked were the Captain Pike stuff.
Yes, of course.
Which fed into Strange New Worlds.
Because it's like but here's a question, because I do not remember this. Strange New World had not started yet when this I'm calling it a crossover because that's what it would be now. Crossover happened.
Right.
So we're being introduced to a new character that then introduced us to the new franchise, Strange New Worlds. Okay.
Yeah, and theoretically, that it was the fan response to Pike and Spock and number one for whatever she appeared in Discovery that led to the fan demand for them to get their own show. That's how they frame it. Like the fans have spoken.
That is how they frame it.
Hey,
whether it was already like in their mind,
in the works to do it or not. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We'll never do it.
I'm cool with that.
But the whole Red Angel plot, what I didn't love, and it's every
because it was confusing.
It was confusing.
So here's the thing: when the villain story, red herring, whatever we're gonna call it, got too many things. Like there's too many ingredients. Like I like the fact that there was this. So as I told y'all before we started, like I watched all the trailers again. So looking at that one, it was here's what we're seeing, these red dots, there's 7 of them. We don't know what they are. What could they be? And I was like, oh, that's right, there were this thing. And that's right, it's her leaving like a map or something to tell them where to go, blah, blah, blah. But it was convoluted. Like, why did it have to be all of that? Like, I wanted her to, I'm glad that you were the Red Angel, but then it was like her mother or wasn't there something about her mama being the Red Angel?
Yeah, her mother was the person who they were the ones who got the time crystal from the Klingons.
Right. Yeah.
And she invented the flight suit that was the Red Angel. The mother did. Yes.
Yes. And she was the one that was leaving the breadcrumbs for Burnham to find, to do the thing that needed to be done.
I think Burnham was leaving her own
breadcrumbs. See, that's the thing about this time in the wibbly wobbly.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. It is, or a temporal paradox, as we call it, where you're like, it doesn't make sense, and then the doctor comes in and says wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, and you're like, oh.
And you're like, oh, good.
That fixes everything beyond the bounds of my poor little human brain.
And that's the thing, like, in that season, it was like, okay, but then it's like she's thrown, isn't at the end of season 2, she's away from everybody else, or no, she comes back. she's
At
back.
the end of season, they go into the time,
the time
right,
portal.
but she goes first, and
she's lost.
follows her,
and she's lost, and they come after her because season 3 is where we get Book.
We're in the future.
The future. Yeah.
The 32nd century.
After the burn.
mm-hmm.
Which Mike, your face in this audio visual medium. Yeah, the burn was interesting though.
I thought the burn was a great idea. It was the resolution, the explanation for how the burn happened that was like,
yes.
What was remind me of the explanation that like
the tears of a young Kelpian.
Right. Bill Irwin as the Kelpian left alone on the planet.
Oh, on the planet, and he got so sad and alone and scared that he blew up everything.
That somehow
and Saru was the one who helped him through his fear. Like that's when like Saru stopped. Like we loved him from the beginning. Let's be here. Saru,
of course,
from the beginning.
From the beginning,
like day one. Hi, how are you, Ganglia? Go through your little Kelpian problem, fine. But that was the season that it was like, here is your moment to like shine, spotlight, all focus. That was not that. Yeah, okay. I give you that. The resolution was weird, but to get there and having all that time with Saru, figuring out how to get this kid to like talk and. Oh, that was okay. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that one.
Well, and I love the idea of the burn, right? Because when you think about it, like progress is not one dimension or one direction.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
That ancient Rome fell, and the people in the quote unquote dark ages were surrounded by all of these ruins of things that were far superior to them in the past. So there are aspects of where you're like, the idea that like interstellar travel has been slowed and limited and that the future is darker. Like I love all that. I think that was a great choice for what the future should be because it gave all this story potential, which I think it will still continue to yield on the Starfleet Academy show. Like the fact that space travel is now new to so many of these people because of the burn,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was
a nice, like, almost like a reset button or a way to make the universe a little smaller again. Yeah.
Right.
In some novels and like Star Trek Online, when they go into the far future, there's been a war that has caused a lot of damage. You know what I mean? So it's almost like that's the beginning of Star Trek, World War III. Most of humanity is wiped out and we have to start over. And when we do, we, coalesce together as a species and meet the Vulcans. But yeah, so I definitely like the stuff in the 32nd century better. Every season got better. Season 4 was better than 3. Like they were, it was about the what did they call it?
The DMA.
The DMA, right?
It's like, ooh, that sounds scary.
Right. Every season has some big MacGuffin that they have to fix,
to defeat,
which is fine.
And fix, and but this one at least was tangible.
Yeah.
Like you saw you physically saw what it was doing and understood that, oh yeah, this is going to truly destroy everything if we don't do something about it.
But also it's not cloaked in tragedy the same way that the DMA, the idea of entire planets being snapped out of existence is like the Quajon being destroyed was like very upsetting and dark and like
very upsetting and dark.
Yeah. And that is like a tragedy where you're like, I mean, there's someone like Book you could see never getting past having your entire home world destroyed, like
being the only one left.
Yeah, no,
like, in a way, like you're it. Yeah. But here's the thing. That's the one thing I liked about Discovery in general, that it was heavy. That topics had weight to them. That the life and death was really life and death.
Mhm.
It wasn't like, oh, we're just saying it's life and death, I've got a little cut here and I'm gonna have to chop my arm off. It's like, no, your planet is about to get swallowed.
Yeah,
It's gonna get
there's real
swallowed and
consequences.
everybody is going to die. And you don't know. And everybody who could be is now going to not be.
Right.
So
And it's
I like
nice that they processed their, emotions. It's not like at the beginning of the next episode, everyone's fine
I
again.
was like, oh,
It's like, no, they have
it ain't a
trauma,
planet.
and that
and
affects
they're
them.
working through it. And they're working
Right.
through it and letting you see. I mean, I've always said that the thing about the new Star Trek is that they're writing fully realized characters.
Mm.
Yeah.
That everyone gets, unless they were just sort of like, we'll call it day players, right? If you were recurring, if you were on more than half a season, or like you had a position, a name, we know your backstory. We know something about you.
Something
and the
about
reason
you,
why you are doing what you're doing or in the position or decided to join Starfleet. And maybe we don't know what's going to happen in your future, but we do know sometimes more or less what happened in your past.
Yeah. Well, and the thing I loved about that fourth season is the alien at the end was not malicious. It wasn't some evil, threat. It was, they didn't even know what they were doing. They were like, oh, I'm sorry.
Our bad.
Our bad. Like,
we was hungry.
Right. We're a much higher form of life than you, but I didn't realize that I was, we were stepping on you. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, you all exist.
Yeah, that was just super Star Trek, I think,
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that was a real, it felt like one of the more, I mean, I was also gonna say real, but like the idea of communicating with aliens is, always sort of, we always sort of skip through it with the universal translator, right?
Correct.
That was one of the, that was a really beautifully done alien communication story where they encounter those aliens and they try and figure out how to communicate with them.
Right.
Because
we really
have
light
nothing.
Patterns.
Because we have nothing.
Right.
To help. We've got to figure it out.
They're so alien that they communicate through light, and it was really like peak Strange New Worlds. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When Uhura had to go and talk to the when she was the only one that could talk to that alien race because they were it was like sound or something different with them, color, there was something, but she was the one to do it. So again, learning like learning about how you would connect with aliens. But also in season 4 we got to learn about cadet school, because that was the season where Tilly was badass bitch on arrival.
Teacher Tilly.
I mean, she was in control and helping those children become great.
School is
I feel like that episode is going to be a model for Starfleet Academy.
I hope that it is. I hope that it is, because it was a great episode.
Yeah. So let's get to the 5th season, where we wrap things up. Of course, when they wrote this season, when they filmed it, they didn't know it was going to be the last season.
So how did they get to? What? Okay, keep talking. I'm sorry.
So they brought everyone back to film that like coda at the end.
And that was my question to you, because if they didn't know what was happening, then how did we get the ubiquitous everybody's wrapping up their storyline?
But it did feel like, there was definitely character arc. That one episode where the time bug is in the ship, and it's
I feel like best episode of the season, right?
That was fan-fucking-tastic.
And it was a great episode for Raynor, and it was a great episode for their the central story, the meat of the story between Burnham and Raynor was her point that it is our connection that makes us stronger. It is like it is our family, it is our relationships with one another. And she kept sending him these like secret messages, right? as if to
Yes.
be like, you are going to save us all by way of this secret message just to prove my point.
I like the introduction of him though. I liked,
Yes.
and that's what I wrote down. Like, I like new number one, love the slow arc to amazing. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, because they need an antagonist, or they need like a foil to some of these characters. They need and he's a foil to Burnham, but he's also a parallel, right? Because she
absolutely
spotted him as another like fuck up in need of a redemption story.
Correct.
Yep.
And look at Tilly being right there, like, listen, dude, like, she said to do this, and here you are being a dickhead. Said, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And that was a great relationship.
It was a great relationship,
mm-hmm.
because I feel like if he ever went out again, like, he'd be like, so Tilly, you, me, together, we can do this, because she was not afraid to speak her mind. And I love that, just that small little moment, permission to speak freely. And then she talks like, I didn't give you permission.
I didn't give you permission.
Like, oh, that's
right.
Like, oh, I'm out of words. That was 19. And then she leaves, right.
Well, and I love also that's the thing that I love about the show is that these characters can be contradictory, and they can be like, Tilly is, one of my favorite characters in the show, obviously, right? But she never stops being kind of a nervous person.
Nope.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? She talks too much, but at the same time, she's fearless.
Yeah.
She's like, Raynor may make her nervous, but he doesn't make her afraid. And at no point does she have anything to lose from confronting him or challenging him.
Nothing.
She just is like her way of handling people is so sort of nervous that it just makes sense. Like it was like, a beautiful relationship.
She's still confident, nervous, but it's almost neurotic, but confident. Like, she knows who she is. She knows Michael. She knows what's going on. You know
my
what I
best
mean?
friend. Like, hello. I thought she was going to slit my throat when we first moved in together, and I learned that she's amazing. We learned that she is the nicest, sweetest human who is going half Vulcan, who is going to do anything and everything to make sure that we are all getting home or getting to wherever we were intending to go, with zero casualties and respect for everyone's opinion. But still, I am the captain. I'm doing what I need to do to make sure that we get to where we need to get to.
And they gave us these characters in season 1 with room to grow.
Right.
It's like the doctor,
and put him in a box.
Right. It's the Dr. Bashir story. Do you know what I mean? It's like somebody who starts off as maybe less than a hero who becomes a hero.
Right.
Which maybe is why people were so cranky at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Stamets is a great example. And in that time travel episode, you see the contrast, because he literally is like, I'm grumpy, because he was like such a curmudgeon in the beginning, and kind of hard to like. But he has grown, and now he's this, still brilliant again, but more lovable version of himself.
Well, because he learned that he didn't have to be an asshole,
right,
to get things done, or for people to do what he's asking them to do. He was thinking, I've got a rule with an iron fist. I'm smarter than everybody here. There's nothing that you can say that's ever going to change what I'm going to do. And slowly but surely, he's learned that, great, you can travel, like, you and the mycelial network, like, oh yeah, you can plug in, you're great, but guess what? You still need people out there to move those little trocars around, and when you can't do it, you got to figure out another way.
Also, I love that his season 5 story was like his concern for his legacy. Do you know what I mean?
Like, oh, we can't jump anymore. What am I useful for?
Right. The pathway drive has replaced the spore drive.
Like, why? What am I for?
Yeah.
Well, and then even at the end, he was like, this is certainly the greatest scientific discovery in anyone's lifetime, right? And he's like, yeah, I guess,
right?
Yeah.
Well, because she, let's skip ahead to that a little bit.
Okay.
So in this season, we have our Bonnie and Clyde characters, Maul and Locke, who have stumbled upon this, long story short, godlike technology that they're tracking down, and we track it down too. We being, the Discovery, and in the end, they get to this infinity room or whatever it is.
I loved that. Can I just say that I thought that was brilliant, that it was like a world of portals to different dimensions, locations, weather.
Yeah.
Period. Weather. And you could just drop in like that. It was like the birthplace of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the way that it was depicted as pathways and then rooms, but not rooms, or like open windows, like until infinity and beyond.
It was hard. Thank you, Buzz Lightyear. It was hard for me to wrap my brain around what I was even looking at, because they could have done it in a much more boring way of like a white room with a bunch of squares that they're like swiping through, you know what I mean? Like, but it's laid out in this way that they could easily fall into or get sucked into or walk into this other world that they have to figure out how to get out of. It was really, really well done, I thought.
It was beautiful. Like it was beautiful to me. And the way in which after the what do we call him? The founder? No. What they call that lady?
Janitor.
The progenitor.
I was gonna say that, but I felt wrong to say. When she showed up looking like a better looking Odo / the terrible lady who got melted into the sea.
Yes.
That center area where they ended up being with the puzzle, I was like it's just prettier and prettier, and like not like how I would think of a cathedral, but like in the far, far future, right? Like it just like the center of like this universe right there is very simple, very clean, but it does so much. It was so pretty.
Well, and I love also that they were like, yeah, we didn't build it. We don't know who did.
Right.
It was somebody came before us.
It was here.
They are.
Yeah.
We just figured we should probably keep safe.
And, like the way Sonequa did that line, because she does a lot of whisper acting, like that's her acting style. And she was, she asked a question or whatever, and then the progenitor was like, we found them, and she's like, you found them? Like, you know what I mean? She fully like dropped the like whisper speak and was like, what
are you talking about? Like, we've been saying that you all did this and we had to find you because you were the creators, and you telling me that it didn't happen that way? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I thought that was a brilliant solution on the writer's part, because you don't really want to find God. You know what I mean? You don't want the characters to be like, oh, well, this is it. This,
Yeah. And that's why, that's why, Dr. Sexy Boots
Culber.
had his
Dr. Sexy Boots.
He had his, his crisis of conscience.
There's more,
like, and
it
wasn't a faith, because he didn't have any faith. Like,
right.
Yeah.
It was like him having that experience with, I mean, I guess it's a trill, because it was the old lady, she was a trill, and like they did the mind meld, and like the consciousness went into him, which I would have loved that. I was like, if one thing could happen, like, let me pretend to be a trill for a day just so I could like
Don't you want like
the
Deep Space Nine episode where Jadzia does like the past life regression trill ceremony with all her friends and stuff? Like, don't you want a trill best friend so you can do that, be one of their past lives for like an hour?
Yeah, and be like, what it do, y'all? I mean,
would be so trippy.
It would be so trippy, and he was so amazing in that episode. Like, he was completely different than his character actually was. He had different physicality. Like, it was his voice, but it was a different like flavor to his voice. And watching him go through that and then come out of it and be a completely different person, I was like, oh, sir, you really experienced, like, you have had an experience that no one else really will ever have, not being Trill